This episode of the Danger Close podcast is brought to you by Cry HAVOC. From New York Times #1 bestselling author Jack Carr. Cry HAVOC, a Tom Reese thriller. Order now.
Once I volunteered for SOG, I stepped into a different world. A black school bus pulls up and we notice the windows are all shot out of it. There's probably 200 bullet holes in the side of the bus. The seats are all ripped apart, and I asked the drivers, what's the deal? The North Vietnamese like to ambush us sometimes, but don't worry, there's a team that's going to show up here in a few minutes. And then we see these guys. It was like they're not there, and then they're there. All of a sudden they appear. We'd never seen anybody dressed like them. There are no patches, no names, nothing on the uniform. They've got grenades hanging all over them, ammunition pouches all around them, headbands on, carrying strange looking weapons, and it just really scary looking people. But my buddy and I were talking about, we're gonna be one of them pretty soon.
I've been on this mission since 1970. The mission isn't complete. I'm still running it. I don't know how many missions I ran when I was in Vietnam. I would say somewhere between 40 and 50 missions. I ran 7 SOG missions. I was successful on all my missions except for the one. My name is James Jones Shorten. I served 20 years in the military with the Navy, the Army Special Forces as a Green Beret and MACV-SOG team leader, and the Air Force Pararescue as a PJ. I am retired from the military after 20 years and went on to school to become a doctor, a radiologist. As early as 10 years old, I was fascinated with cameras and film and movies, and I wanted to document my life because I wanted a life of adventure and I wanted to have it all together. Well, I had no clue where Vietnam was or what was going on, but it sounded very adventure, like, man, fighting a war in this foreign country, tropics, the palm trees. So I wanted to go. We had a mission come down where there was a jet crash. It happened in Cambodia, and it was an F-4 jet. He was dropping a bomb on a bridge. He came up on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, hit the first hill. When he hit the first hill, the engines left the fuselage, bounced off to the second hill, went through it, and landed on the third hill. They sent the PJs in at first, but they couldn't get near the ground. Just way too much enemy. What they did is said, we want you to go in tomorrow. So we're flying over, and I'm coming in on the first chopper, and I'm coming down. Soot is blowing all over the place from the flame, and I'm looking down, and I see this bridge. I see the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and all of the bamboo and the trees are they tied them together over the road so you couldn't see the road. So we land, and I sit there and I just wait. I'm waiting for the sticks to drop, and I'm waiting for my ears to pop so I can hear and see what's going on. So we start walking down a little bit further. All of a sudden I'm seeing bunkers. I go over to the bunkers and I can see some CBU in there, it's a cluster bomb unit. Then I start moving a little bit further, and all of a sudden I see this graveyard. Over the fence on the opening, there's a big communist star there. I'm going, where the heck am I? So I start walking a little bit further and I see this meeting room. It's about, 20 by 20 on stilts, this big room. What the heck? I go up and we look inside, there's nothing in there, and I'm looking around the trees and everything. Start seeing all kinds of pieces of the jet all over the place. I find a boot with a foot in it. We put that in the rucksack. As I'm almost to the crest of the second hill, all of a sudden I'm hearing these trucks coming down the road. All of a sudden, gunships are firing like miniguns and everything, and the miniguns firing over your head is scary. So I get on the horn, I go, what's going on? He goes, you got 6 truckloads of enemy, a bunch of troops running behind it, you got 2 armored cars and they're coming after you. I thought, oh, great. I get up on the top, we found all these hooches up there, but where the jet went through, it wiped out some hooches. We go through, we find uniforms, pith helmets, got all the stuff, and we just stuffed it in the rucksack. Well, so then the pilot says, we got to get you out of there. I said, man, I'm not on the 3rd hill yet. He goes, look, if we don't get you out of there, you're going to have to spend the night. We're running out of fuel, running out of ammo, and we got a storm coming in. I said, okay, come in and get us out, because I had to get my team out of there. We would have never made it. The first chopper comes in, and they got them out of there. The next ship's coming in, and I'm seeing the enemy. You can hear them coming up through the bushes, and we're getting ready to battle it out with them. All of a sudden, one of the guys gets an RPG off. It hits off to the side. The chopper comes in. I said, I want a gunship on both sides of that chopper. And I want them shooting into the jungle behind us and in front of us to keep any enemy down the best you can. The gunner's coming in, and the gunner is shooting down into the bushes, and we're shooting at the bushes. I don't know how many enemies are dropping, but they're like dropping like flies. As we hook on the ladder and this chopper's starting to lift up, all of a sudden I hear this boom like that, and I'm sitting there going, oh no. I'm waiting for the chopper to fall down on top of me. I thought he got hit with an RPG, and that was it. But what actually happened was the gunner was shooting so crazy in there to try to keep everything down that his rotor hit a tree, and he knocked the ends of his rotor off. As we were leaving, we flew over. I could see the jet over there, and then I looked down, I could see the trucks on the road, and I told the pilot, he says, you see the ground? And he goes, yeah. I said, you see the squares? He goes, yeah. I said, it's a village or something. As I was being pulled out on that mission, I looked over and saw the jet, and I knew I failed at getting those bodies out of there. I failed at it, and it always bothered me. When I got back to the base, the Cobra 8-3 pilots were there. They were the other jet. And I had to tell them, I said, there's no way somebody could have lived through that. The engines left the fuselage. It was a huge ball of flame. And they were both in tears. But I had no choice. I had to get my team out. There was no way 7 people are going to hold off 1,000 enemy. We had 350 that we knew of. We don't know how many were coming from behind in the jungles coming towards us. You're just not going to make it. When I came back to the United States after being discharged, I went to school to become a radiologist. I finished the school, all my training, my residency, and what have you. One day I was talking to a guy named Harlow Short. He was a medic when I was on the A-team. I told Harlow I want to go back. I'd like to go to that site and see what I can do. And he says, well, let's go. I took 3 months off and I flew back to Phnom Penh, Cambodia. I met Harlow at Phnom Penh, and that night we got together with DPAA. They said they didn't have enough information to go back in, but one of the guys told me, he says, look, if you want to go there, just go. I go, how? He goes, go up to Ban Lung, work it out, and you'll find somebody that'll help you get up there. I said, okay, I will. The first time I went up, I realized I was out of shape to be going hiking 100 miles through the jungles. So we went back and I exercised. I would say I exercised maybe about a week, 2 weeks, got myself back in shape. It took us 10 days to get up there. We spent 3 days there and couldn't find anything. I got pieces of the jet to help give the family some closure. And on the third day, these guys came out of the bushes with AKs, wanted to know what we were doing there, and they had their AK on me. My guy that I hired, that was a province chief, he told me, he said, they want us out of here. They want us out of here tomorrow. We were gonna leave the next day anyway. I took my pack and everything and I put it on the raft. And we took the raft down, and what a beautiful trip that was, going down the river on this bamboo raft. When I was there, I worked with another guy from Stony Beach. He goes, Jim, I won't be able to hang out with you tomorrow. I'm going to go down and talk to the Vietnamese. I said, can I go with you? He goes, oh, it might not be a good idea. I says, they're down there looking for their people that were killed in that battle. They told them all those villages and all those hooches was a hospital. And that's where, when they got hit on the Ho Chi Minh Trail, when they were dropping the bombs, everybody that was wounded or injured, they would take them to that hospital. Nobody knew that was even there. And I said, well, let me draw you a map. So I drew a map. I said, tell them to check right here. And they went down. He gives them the map. He goes, he says, I'll show you this map. He said, one of the guys told me for you to check right here. He goes, where'd you get this map? He goes, well, the guys you were trying to kill back in 1970s up there looking for the pilots. And he goes, we've been hunting in that area. We found 127 remains. Still looking for over 100. Over 227 people killed. And how many died after? Who knows? I have no idea why they don't let you just go in and get the bodies out. Why deal with that, you know? Why deal with it? When you think about the people that were left behind and what they're going through, knowing that a country has given up on them, that's terrible. It's not a failed mission until you stop looking. I don't consider it a real failure, but the mission was to get the pilots out, and I couldn't get them out. The mission will be complete when they come back.
All right, we're going to talk a little bit today about the SIG P210, a unique pistol, a classic pistol, and one that I included in 2 of the novels, Only the Dead and Red Sky Morning. The 2 passages that I'm about to read feature conversations between Rafe Hastings and James Reese. And in creating these characters, I needed to differentiate them in a variety of ways because they're both about the same age, they were both in the SEAL teams at the same time, and would have similar experiences downrange. So one, I gave a background with a father who is a SEAL and a grandfather who's also in Naval Special Operations. And for Rafe Hastings, I gave him a family lineage in Rhodesia. But I also differentiated them by what they prefer to carry. While Reese is more of a modern Kydex holster, striker fire pistol type guy. We have Rafe Hastings, who's more of a 1911 guy, 45, leather holster, leather belt, and hence the difference between both of these characters. And when Reese gets his P210 in Only the Dead, he has just been released from prison. Rafe Hastings picks him up. Rafe Hastings, of course, is a 1911 guy. So he gives Reese something more akin to a 1911 than, say, a striker fire auto-loading pistol. And here's their conversation. Rafe opened the Tuffy console between the seats and handed Reese the holstered pistol. Reese pulled it from its leather, ejected the magazine, and tucked it under his leg before pushing down a manual safety on the left side and racking the slide rearward. A round ejected, which Reese caught. He then locked the slide to the rear and confirmed the chamber was clear. Yours? Reese asked. It is. It's a SIG P210, customized by Bruce Gray. Where's the red dot on this thing? Reese joked, twisting it in his hand as if searching for a modern reflex optic. His friend ignored the comment. I know you can't handle the recoil of the 45 in my 1911s, hence this 9mm, Rafe smiled. And I know how much you enjoy rich kid shit that someone else pays for. You do have me there. Bruce only built a few, so try not lose it, or break it, or get it confiscated by the federal government. Don't you worry, Reese said. Mind if I dry fire it? Be my guest. Reese checked the chamber once more and rode the slide home out of respect for the gunsmith who had painstakingly customized the classic SIG pistol. He then rested his right thumb on the manual safety as he slowly pressed the trigger to the rear. That's nice. I might have to get one of these with your dad's credit card. I don't think it's expired yet. Rafe smiled and shook his head. Reese reinserted the magazine and racked the slide back once again, letting it slam forward to chamber a round. He then pushed up the manual safety, ejected the magazine, and pressed the round he had just caught moments earlier back into the top of the stack before reinserting the magazine and pulling down on it to ensure it was properly seated. That's Only the Dead, of course. James Reese gets into a couple gunfights with this later in the book when he is not disposing of bad guys with the tomahawk. And then the P210 makes another appearance here at Red Sky Morning, book number 7. You still carrying that P210, Rafe asked? As long as I keep out shooting you on the range with the P210, I'm gonna stick with it as my daily carry. I thought I recommended you switch back to your 365X macro. I should, but I've grown to like the feel of the 210. There is some history there, Rafe confirmed, but it's only got 8 rounds. 10. It's the Bruiser Industries Bruce Gray edition, plus 2 base pads on the magazine. They made another one for me. Did you tell them you'll probably lose it or break it within the month? Good point. I should have gotten 2. 2 is 1, as they say. I've heard that somewhere before, Reese said. P210, classic pistol. SIG's made a few over the years. This was a compact carry they made a few years ago. This was a commemorative edition they made a few years ago. And this is the P210 Target that is currently available. That's nice.
And we were coming in on short final. We were essentially dragging the skids across the top of the canopy as we're going for the hole, and we get the signal to get out on the skids. So we get out on the skids on both sides. And I was thinking the North Vietnamese could take a rock and knock me off of the skid. We're going so slow. I don't particularly like this. I'm just standing here, right out in the open, and then I look off to the side and I see what looked like a little village of about 6 or 7 little hooches, thatched hooches over there, and I remembered they didn't say anything about a village being close to this bomb crater. Mm. I mean, how did they leave a whole little village out of the briefing this morning? So I thought, well, that's strange. And then we're going, and I could see where the hole was in the canopy, and we get up, and we start to go down in it, and the helicopter's vibrating and shaking as we're trying to go in, and the pilot's trying to keep from getting a rotor strike on the trees as we go down, and then we stop, because he can't go down any further, but we're still about 6 feet above the bottom of the crater. And I thought, holy cow, I'm carrying 80-pound plus of gear. It's 6 feet down to to the bottom of this crater. I'm going to break my legs when I hit, but, I just got to suck it up and go. So, coordinated with the guy next to me. So bent my knees to jump in. And just as I bent my knees, I saw an NVA pop up over about 10 feet from me over on the right with an AK-47. And I said, oh, geez. So instead of jumping in, I jumped back up on the edge of the floor, but he ripped off part of a magazine just as I did that. And the bullets just missed my legs, but they hit the guy next to me and took his legs out from under him. I caught him by the back of the harness with one hand. I put a half a magazine in the NVA, and took care of him. But then the whole ambush initiated around us. So now everybody's shooting. I got the wounded guy back in, the blood squirting all over me. So I'm getting soaked with blood. I got an indige on each side of me with a CAR-15 muzzle, on each side of my head. So I'm getting powder burns, coming out of that. The M60 machine gunner right next to me, the door gunner. He's firing. Bullets are crisscrossing inside the compartment. And, I got a little nervous. And I was having a little conversation that, went something like, man, I trained for 2 years to get here, to take out some bad guys. And I'm going to get killed in the first 15 seconds. I am not happy. I'm not going to have time to do it. There's nothing between me and the bullets except air. And they're just coming everywhere. And so I finished off that magazine, but then I couldn't get a magazine out of my pouch. My hand was so slick from the blood, and the magazines were packed in there so tight, I couldn't get it out at first. I eventually did, but once I got it out, then I was having trouble trying to get it in the magazine well. And what was happening was I was discovering what happens to your fine motor coordination when your stress level goes up. All of a sudden, you can't do things like you normally do. Like in training, you can put that magazine right in there with no problem at all. You can get it out of your pouch. You can see the sights. You can aim. You can do everything. But as soon as your stress level starts up, you can't focus. You can't see the sights. Your hands are shaking. They won't do what you're trying to tell them to do. There are certain physiological responses that your body does when the stress level goes up. That just happens. It's instinct. So I'm steadily learning about, and this is what happens in combat. But eventually we got out of that hole and got back to the launch site, and I went to the team leader and I said, I'm just curious. While we were down in the hole, that minute or two that we were in there, how many magazines did you use? And then, he said, I emptied 6. I was getting ready to start on my 7th one. I threw 2 frag grenades and a smoke grenade. So how'd you do? I said, I emptied 3. I was thinking about a 4th one, but, we got out. And he looked at me and he said, I'm going to tell you something, Lieutenant. If you don't learn to change magazines faster when people are shooting at you, you're going to die. I said, copy that. I will get faster. He said, the helicopter in front of us just got shot down. I told the pilot, come back around, and I would drop the McGuire rig out and go down the rope. And we were receiving fire, but the McGuire rig went out, and it was suspended 20 feet above the jungle canopy, which was 150 feet high. And my plan was to grip the rope really tightly, wrap my feet around it, and just ease myself down to the McGuire rig. But it was a brand new nylon rope, and it was very slick. I couldn't control my speed, and I was just getting faster and faster. The rope was just blood soaked because it was taking all the skin and everything off my hands. And I'm moving faster and faster and thinking, there's some flaws in my plan. what happens is the stress level will cause you to do things that are instinctive. You will behave in certain ways when your stress level goes up. When I start shooting at you, there are things you're going to do without even thinking about it. And I started watching and I was picking up on those patterns. So I told my guys one time, I said, there's something about, human reaction to combat. There are certain things that the NVA do that we need to watch for and be ready for. Mm. And, they were curious, wait, what is it? And I said, well, watch. Every time when we initially make contact with them, if they go behind a tree or behind a rock or something, every time they will shoot around the right side of the tree or the right side of the rock. So we know they're going to do that. So we just, from our perspective, we looked at the left side of it and we get ready and we'll see the muzzle of that AK poke around that side of the tree and that head's coming right behind it. So you be ready to rip off a 3 or 4 round burst right on the side of that tree and we'll take them out. And most of the time when they go down in an initial contact, if they just drop into vegetation, they'll stay right where they just dropped. So you put a 3 or 4 round burst right where you saw them go down because they're still there. Mm. So they got really excited about that and they started watching and said, wow, they really do that. And I said, yeah, but the other thing, we're human too. We're going to shoot around the right side of that tree. And we're primarily doing it because we're right-handed. Right. Every once in a while, you'll have a left-handed guy, and he'll shoot around the other side. But 90% or more of the time, they're right-handed, and they're going to that side of the tree, so we know that's happening. So we got to make sure we don't always go to that side of the tree, too, because they'll figure it out. When we hit the ground, don't just lay there and shoot. Roll one way, go one side or the other. Get away before you start shooting, because they're going to hammer right where you just went down. So there are things we can do to overcome the instinct and to increase our survivability. Yeah. And, they thought that was pretty cool. And, the invisible thing, I had a little signal, invisible. Just put my hand up like that, and that meant be invisible. Yeah. So that means you don't smell, you don't make a sound, you move in a particular way, and think we had a whole little set of things that we did to be invisible. And it's like if you're a deer hunter and a deer is coming directly at you in the woods, he's much more difficult to see than if he's going across horizontally. The way those big bucks give themselves away if they're coming at you is they can't help but to stop and look to one side and look to the other side. So now you got a big head going back and forth horizontally, and you can pick up on it. So when we move, we're going to move in a direct method. We're not going to be going back and forth with a weapon like that, because most of the time you're going to have your weapon and be looking over here, and they're going to be over there, and it takes too long to get back to them. So we started practicing on a range, a lot of things to do, how to shoot, how to point shoot, instinct shooting. We became much more lethal when we started doing that.
But as an honorable people who lived up to their pledge to defend democracy,
it's their war. They're the ones who have to win it or lose it.
All right, give me some.
Picking of the birthdays for the draft.
And sometimes going in the dark where there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you stop now. Don't you sit down on the steps, cause you find this kind of hard. But I still going, boy. I still climbing. That's the way it is.
hands out and everything. And I just stood there at the door. I said, I'm alive today, thanks to these guys. I'm going back to America, and they're still here going to be fighting the war. In our day, they were called triple volunteers. We volunteered for the Army, volunteered for jump school, and then volunteered for Special Forces. And in the book, The Green Berets, they talked about the camaraderie, the spirit of the Green Berets in that book. Well, I knew I was going to go. If I go, I want to go with the Green Berets if I can get through the training. And got through the training, that's where I went. We left for Vietnam right around April 26th, 27th, 1968. See, this is the overall FOB, FOB-1 from the helicopter. And this is Highway 1 with the King Bees on the launch pad ready to go. When Johnny McIntyre and I landed at Phu in the South Vietnamese Air Force, the King Bees, we got off and a recon team, Spike Team Idaho, got on. We just passed. It's like we're green-ass replacements and they're hardcore veterans. They got on the helicopter, went on a mission, and were never heard from again. That was the second time that team was wiped out. Because Idaho had been wiped out before that. And that was our introduction to MACV-SOG, the Secret War in Vietnam. Oh, here's the Go-No Spider. So this is Spider Parks on the left, and me with my Trenton State College. Robert J. Spider Parks. He was almost like a big brother to me. And I met him in training group, and we became friends. If you want to see Spider in his car, he had an 88 Oldsmobile. For 2 days, there was uncertainty about the status of Spike Team Idaho. Then it became official that they were officially listed as missing in action, and Spider had to rebuild the team. And he brought the team together, and we began very intensive training after that point. And that's how we transitioned from the wiped out team to putting together Idaho again. Again, this goes back to October, the pre-mission photo, right? That day. Spider got promoted to a cubby rider. Don Wolken became the team leader. I got promoted to the assistant team leader, 1-1, but I always carried a radio. And Jim was the extra American on the team. So this is Sal, Hep with his sunglasses, Fook, our point man. And again, this is before we launched on October 6, 1968 into Target Echo 4, E4. So we were on the ground for the first day. We moved through the jungle. We had been on the ground for maybe 2 hours, and we heard all this noise coming towards us. And we thought it was the NVA at first. The team quickly gets online. We pulled the pins out of hand grenades, and we got overrun by monkeys. It's like, welcome to the jungle, you know? So they scattered over us. We were just glad the monkeys went by and left us alone. We put the pins back in. And then within a half hour, Fook and Don were stung several times. They hit a bee's nest. Those are the little things, life in the jungle. With Special Forces, we pride ourselves on working with our indigenous troops. And in the Vietnam War, you had different races. We had South Vietnamese men on our team. But this is Sal and Hep. And they're sitting on my bed in the hooch. And I told them I wanted to get one picture. I said, someday I want to look at this picture. So someday is now looking back on them. And this would be the fall of '68. When I met Hep the first time, he had a really cool black hat with Vietnamese jump wings on it. And he had sunglasses on. So instantly, Hep was the coolest guy on the team. He also spoke total 4 or 5 languages. And just an amazing guy. And a smart ass. You know, he had that South Vietnamese. He'd been around the Americans enough that he could sharpen his wit a little bit, but very impressive. And Sal was just quiet. And I knew he had wanted to be a farmer, left his farm to come work with SOG because he didn't want to serve with the traditional South Vietnamese unit. And he was just an amazing man in the jungles. When I first met Hep and Sal, I knew I had to earn their respect. That's part of this reciprocity between each other. And then Sal turned to Hep and whispered, looking at me, saying I'm too tall, my feet are too big, and I look stupid. So I had to earn his respect, and vice versa. He was so good he could smell the enemy. And we were never ambushed. Whenever they got close to us, Sal and Hep or Fook would be the first ones to alert us to the danger. And they always opened fire first on the NVA that were coming at us through the jungle. Next morning, first light, we're ready just in case we got hit because the NVA had sapper units. These would be anti-SOG teams, and they were hunter-killer teams. They trained to kill the Americans but leave the indigenous people alive for psychological purposes. Well, we were ready, but we didn't get hit. We moved out, and around 2 o'clock, we finally got to the top of a little knoll. And we were taking a quick break. I was opening a can of apricots, and Hep and Sal heard the enemy, and they opened fire on the enemy. And that began our heaviest contact that I'd ever seen at that point. And it went on for at least 4 hours. They kept coming wave after wave towards us. And we were fortunate in that the knoll was small enough that they could only mass so many men at one time. They would come, we'd blow them back, they'd come again, and that rhythm went on for quite a while. And they were only maybe 10 to 12 yards away from us, but they were still in the triple canopy jungle. A lot of times you wouldn't even see them. You would see their AKs or them shooting bullets at us, and we would shoot into the jungle and blow them back in the jungle, back down the hill. In the very early stages, there would be this full automatic AKs, our guys shooting, and then all of a sudden everything would stop, sound-wise. All you hear were guys slamming into new magazines, and then back to the full automatic, and it was just ongoing. There's like one time I'm shooting at the main wave coming at us, and Fook was killing the people down the hill. And I thought he was just shooting over my shoulder. So the next day we're doing the after action report. We talked to each other, lessons learned. And at the end of it, I asked Fook, I said, how come you were shooting over my shoulder? And he goes, I wasn't. They were NVA, they were trying to get ready to kill you. Up and they're aiming at you, and I killed them. It's like, oh, okay. After the firefight had been going on for 2 hours, we had killed so many that they began stacking dead bodies to try to get a higher elevation so they could shoot down at us. We were a couple hours without TAC air, and then finally TAC air came in with fast movers, A-1 Sky Raiders, everything from gun runs, dropping 250-pound bombs, napalm, later cluster bomb units, and then we had helicopter gunships, the muskets that made gun runs, and I directed all the airstrikes. At one point I was talking to Spider on the radio, and down the hill I could see some motion. It turned out it was an NVA that was crawling up the hill towards us with his AK-47. I turned around and fired one round and shot him in the head. His head exploded, but I still had the radio open, and Spider freaked out because the sound of the round that I shot damaged his ears and just exploded in the radio. So that night we get back to base, he chewed my ass out and said, from now on, always let go of the handset when you're shooting. Lessons learned the hard way. That last hour, we were getting low on ammo, low on hand grenades. We were getting low on everything. I always carried 10 to 12 rounds for the M79, 10 to 12 hand grenades, battery for the radio, and then of course the 600 plus rounds in 20 round magazines with 18 rounds per magazine. And then at last light, a Spider saw an area big enough for a king bee to hover. He couldn't land because of the vegetation. So Captain Tin flew in, hovered for 10 minutes, and we had to go through elephant grass to get to it. This is a picture drawn by a Green Beret medic, Sam McIntyre, and it depicts, in fact, let me put on my official King Bee hat. This is a King Bee flown by Captain Tin. Here he is hovering with bullets going into it and looking down at us, just as cool as the Rocky Mountain breeze. That's what I always said. Oh, every time I look at that picture, I'm back. We finally get to the helicopter under heavy enemy fire. It looked like hundreds of weapons in the jungle, all shooting at us as we left at last light. You had the dark evergreen jungle with all these little sparks coming in, green tracers coming up at us. And Don and I threw the first 4 people in, and then Don's the team leader, he should be the last man out. He grabbed me, threw me up. Well, something happened, I broke loose or fell. I turned around and just grabbed him by the lapel. 230 pounds, my adrenaline was pumping. I picked him up and just threw him up to the King Bee. He grabbed on, got in, he reached down and pulled me in, and we extracted. The helicopter's rising. We all fired our last rounds at the enemy. We learned later that that King Bee had 48 bullet holes in it, and nobody was shot. But we were happy to be alive. And again, there had to be some divine intervention in there. As we were leaving, we got up, and you could just see the sunset. It was beautiful. And I looked over at Sal, and Sal gave me a nod. And that was the most significant nod I ever received in my life, because that was like, you done good, you know? To me, that was a moment of really being accepted. So that was my first major contact with the team. You know, a lot of people are critical about the Vietnam War, the domino theory, part of what we got there on. But my Vietnamese, particularly the guys from North Vietnam, they told us our family left North Vietnam to come to South Vietnam, and our team knew that their government in South Vietnam was corrupt. They knew it, but they would rather live with a government that was corrupt that they knew that they could live with than to be under the thumb of communism. And they were willing to die fighting for that rather than being a communist. And that was one point that, in my mind, that's all I needed to hear. Once we were on the ground, the politics left our mind. It was just to accomplish the mission and worry about the man to the left and to the right of us. To do the mission and to get the team back in one piece. That was the priority, always was. I came home realizing and knowing that none of our guys had been killed during my tenure on the team. Throughout '68, those missions, there were so many times that the King Bees landed and pulled us out under fire like that day they were Captain Tin, time and time again. And they did it for years. And whereas me, it was just 19 months of my 2 tours of duty there. And the hardest time for me was the night that I left. I went down, I gave the team $500. We had a huge party. We ate and drank. Each one of my guys passed out one by one. Hep was the last one, still awake, like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And we're outside, we're talking, the moon's out and everything. Do you need anything else? I said, no, Hep. He literally collapsed in the sand, passed out. I picked him up, I dusted him off, carried him back to the team room, put him in bed, covered him up with a poncho liner, and I just stood there in the door. I said, I'm alive today, in early April 1970, thanks to these guys. I'm going back to America, and they're still here going to be fighting the war. And so today, every day, ever since that day, I've always thought about the guys on the team, the King Bee pilots, the aviators that put their lives on the line for us. But first and foremost, Hep and Sal and the other guys on the team. Here today, thanks to them.
For over 22 years, Bravo Company has been trusted by professionals who go into harm's way. Because failure is not an option. Built to the highest standards, BCM rifles are made for those who demand reliability, precision, and grit. No gimmicks, no shortcuts, just tools forged for the fight. BCM, trusted by warriors, tested by time. Go to BravoCompanyUSA.com to learn more.
We were personally briefed by Colonel Jack Warren, who was the commander of CCN. Oh, a hell of a character. He's smoking a cigarette. He's wearing a black windbreaker, which we called 1-0 jackets. And he said, "Welcome to CCN." And he threw open that screen, and I'm looking for Vietnam. And part of Vietnam is way over here, one side. And I looked at it, my God, that's Laos. And right away, he started identifying where some teams were already. This one's on road watch. This one is on a prisoner snatch, etc. And I just went, wow, I have really lucked out. This is where I really wanted to be. Only later did I realize that dangerous, hazardous special operations come with casualties. I never regretted volunteering, but boy, there was a great cost to pay among my friends. And my team leader, he comes over and tells me, "John, you can't go on this one. I talked to the pilot, can't carry everyone, otherwise they'll be overloaded at this altitude." So he said, "You're going to have to stay here." And I really, internally, I went, oh shit, I really wanted to run that mission. It would have been my first, yada yada. And the next morning, Bob Howard said, "John, your team was overrun last night. They are lost, all of them." From that point forward, I just assumed that I was going to be killed running recon. And that made it easier for me, because once you start fearing, oh my God, that could have happened to me, just pretend. You're going to die for sure, so get on with it. And that was what I learned from that. I'll never forget them. Even Bullocks and Simmons, I only knew my teammates for 10 minutes. That was a hard introduction to running recon in Laos. The helicopters fly away and it's quiet again. We just listen for about 10 minutes. We had only gone like 200 yards beyond the LZ and bumped head on into a number of North Vietnamese. Right away they open up and a point man takes an AK round right through his left bicep. And so the team leader grabs him. He's leading him back. He looks over at me and he says, because I'm the 1-1, I'm the assistant team leader now. He said, "Hold him off," because he knows it's going to take a while to get back to the LZ. So I've got my suppressed Swedish K and I'm staying there and George is with me. I say, "Get out of here." He says, "No." I said, "George, what are you, some kind of John Wayne?" He says, "No, I'm George Bacon III. I'm going to stay right here." Okay, and by now the bad guys are screaming out there. We're throwing grenades and we're shooting.
Did you carry that 25, that little cat house gun?
No, I usually carried a serious gun.
Oh, good. Okay.
Which we had concealed carry authorized.
Did you carry Browning High Power or 1911?
Darn right. Which that was a general issue gun, but when it came right down to it, you could carry anything you wanted. Nobody would have blinked about it. But I liked the Browning. I'd owned one and shot one before I joined the Army. Great piece, except you had to be legal Geneva Convention. You had to fire hardball in 9mm. And it's not like shooting a 45 and it's not like shooting a soft point. It tended to poke holes through. It was relatively low velocity. And you could even hit someone several times. They weren't necessarily really done. They might go down, but they aren't dead. And whenever a 1-0 would come back from an operation, he'd go through a debrief, and then lo and behold, he'd come to the club to tell guys about the mission and what they did and so on. And I just quietly pulled up a chair and a beer and listened. And the next thing you know, the salt shaker is the bad guys, but they were up on the hill, and we circled around because in detail, after action report, just about tactics and fighting the enemy and why am I alive here today. I learned an incredible amount that way. That was my primary schoolhouse. Like a good young soldier, when I got there, I kept my mouth shut, which I don't care your age. That if you're a new guy coming in wherever you are, and it's not about their relationship with you, the guys are already there. learn. You've got to learn. We were tasked to do a night ambush on a highway in southern Laos. The purpose was capture the driver, because that driver, he knows where the caches are, the pickup points are, and so on. To stop the truck, we set upon multiple claymores in a crescent aimed at the front tire. And we had those claymores danger close. I mean, like maybe 10 meters away. However, there was just a little rise there on the road, so we could tuck down without that much clearance over us. And I had to have my head up watching, because this truck is coming way down there. You can hear it. They've got blackout lights on, the cat eyes with only just a real low wattage shining right on the road so the driver can see it. So I'm watching, and I can see he's just about there. Boom! And smoke hasn't even cleared, and we're assaulting. So the OV-10 was a fantastic aircraft. The OV-10 was a purpose-designed, armed forward air control aircraft. This is an OV-10.
Wow, that is so cool.
The pilot in the front seat and the plastic man in the back seat. And what was great is you had two M60 machine guns on each side, and this one doesn't have it. There were 4 rocket pods, 2 of them with WP for marking, and 2 of them with HE. So that a team gets in trouble, pilot right away is calling Hillsborough, he's getting fires. And I'm talking to the team, and then we start rolling in and strafing. We fire rockets. This saved a lot of people's lives. And of course, they got rid of it as soon as it worked. So.
Larry Trimble on Wednesday with R.T. Radler had gone up to the top of Marble Mountain as a listening post. Now, Marble Mountain was about 250, 300 foot rock that literally just came. There was no slope or anything. Just came out of the sand. And did a radio check on Little Marble. Another little peak there was a Marine outpost. Sometime around between 2 and 2:30, the Marine outpost received a blast. That was the beginning. And we had 164 bad guys inside the camp. We did not know that until later. They were throwing satchel charges everywhere, grenades. There was 2 mortars by Marble Mountain where Larry was, and they were shooting over Marble Mountain and hitting the camp. They were traversing left and right, up and down. There was no pattern to it. Now, to get down to the mortar pit where the NVA were, it was a little single pathway. So Larry worked his way down there and destroyed the mortars there. Shortly after that, there was a ground assault, and he's the only one there. So Larry, by himself, takes on the ground assault. He pulls back. There's a ground assault on the other side. And again, because of the terrain features, he's there by himself. Cecil Ames is on the radio. All hell breaks loose up there. According to after-action reports, 37 North Vietnamese / Viet Cong attacked Marble Mountain. They attacked it at least 2 to 3, maybe 4 ground assaults. Larry saved the camp. Had the North Vietnamese taken control of the high ground, I would not be here today. Then we go down to the camp itself. They throw a grenade. I wake up with muffled noises. I look out the door and a homemade grenade rolls down the hallway. Basically, it's a long house with a corridor in the center and rooms, 5 rooms on either side. So there's 10 rooms. I yelled for grenade. I said grenade. And a homemade grenade has a fuse from 0 to 20 seconds, thereabouts. Lieutenant Donald Dahl says, "Why in the hell is the freaking grenade?" So, Special Forces, you're not exactly bright. I never said we were smart. So we go out to the door and the damn thing goes off. Now, the way we were standing, I believe that he got the brunt of the shrapnel. I just got a little bit, what I would call a John Kerry wound. Just minor hits, and that was it. And then a big explosion. And that's when Lieutenant Potter got killed. We did not know it at the time. It's dark. We called for everybody's okay. Lieutenant Dahl says, "Hey, the son of a bitch is going down the hallway. Cover me." So he's running down the hallway. And Donald Dahl is a wrestler, was a collegiate wrestler. No neck. They called him no neck. He's running down the hall barefooted with a Swedish K. He runs into Tom Pardee. Tom Pardee goes out the door and makes a left. Donald Dahl makes a right and shoots the Viet Cong or the NVA that has his finger on the satchel charge. The reason I know that was because the next morning I saw it. I saw him. I saw the dead body. And a nanosecond later, he gets hit. He calls out that he's wounded. I rush out. I'm trying to drag him. And I'm bare-chested, and I could feel, and I'm sure you've had this feeling before, where people are trying to shoot at you, and you can feel the air of the bullet as it goes right by your bare torso. Of course, I had a bare torso. And they're shooting at him at the ground because I can see the ground explode next to him as I'm dragging him. Take him to the second room, and I called for a medic. Out of nowhere, a medic appears. I go across, and to this day, I still don't know who that medic is. I really don't know. I go across to where that front room is, where Pardee was, and Captain Lamb shows up. And thank God I had seen him earlier, because I almost shot him. And there's explosions going on everywhere. There's that mortar fire. That is just, it's raining mortars, 82 millimeter mortars. And I go back, I said, "Cover me." No, he asked me, he says, "Where's our defensive position?" I said, "On the north side." I said, "I wouldn't advise going out there. We're not going to make it." I says, "Cover me. I'm going to check on the lieutenant." Right about that time, Melville Westerfield shows up. It's funny how you remember things like that. His hair is combed, in full uniform, runs to his door, to his room, picks up his gear, runs out the door. And this is something that you and I, and we try to explain it, and it's hard to explain. And perhaps you can help me on this. It's a feeling, and you don't know if you're hearing it. Something is not right, but you sense someone or something is approaching you. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
And yet you can't see him. Mm-hmm. But you know that he's there.
Oh, yeah, that's Sixth Sense. That's why we're here today.
Right. It's that Sixth Sense. And it's dark. And all of a sudden, I see a silhouette in the door. It's a dark silhouette. And I don't know if it's one of our guys or what. And there's an explosion on the east door. It lights him up. And he's a bad guy. He's got tan shorts on. He's got a belt across his chest. He's got an AK-47. And that light exposes both of us.
This episode of the Danger Close podcast is brought to you by Cry Havoc. From New York Times #1 bestselling author Jack Carr. Cry Havoc, a Tom Reese thriller. Order now.
Watch a Cry Havoc teaser here, or watch another episode of the podcast here.